Let's talk swirl marks. What are swirl marks? Okay, so let me set up the context of this moment. And this is completely off the cuff, as the saying goes. And it is one of many lies in the industry. In fact, I might label this video, and this is not for clickbait, because this is one of the many perpetrated lies of the industry, which is swirl marks. And let me apply some context to that. Never apply wax, never apply polish in a circular pattern, because A, it will create swirl marks, and B, swirl marks are harder to remove than non-swirl marks. So, in fact, I should dedicate this video to Chris Fix, and I know a lot of you know who Chris Fix is. He is what I call one of these guys that are part of the detailing grift economy. Has learned how to talk the talk, but has never actually walked the walk. So let me rant about that after the fact. So according to him, and I have watched one of his videos, which he talks about applying wax. What is the best car polish? What is the best wax? Never do it in a circular pattern because that will produce swirl marks. Swirl marks are harder to get out than back and forth or up and down marks. Okay, so what are swirl marks? So here I am setting myself up for another video on another topic, which has to do with creating shine, polishing your paint, and I have my laser pointer here and my infamous acrylic disc. What I have here, I have introduced, which is a polite way of saying that I have, at a level, destroyed this surface of this acrylic disc by sanding it with 2000 grit sandpaper. Now, I could argue, did I destroy the surface or did I actually refine the surface? Well, that largely or entirely depends on, well, two things. One, your definition of those terms, and secondly, what is your end goal? So I could actually argue that I refined the surface of this acrylic disc by putting 2000 grit sanding marks, because what I did in the process of sanding that to create this satin-like appearance is I've refined the surface to make it uniform, which is what's called a uniform scratch pattern, which means that the scratches now are all uniform in depth, 2000 grit depth, whatever that is, but they are uniform. So I could say that I have actually refined the surface and made it better. But you're like, well, Darren, if that was my clear coat, and that is why I use this acrylic disc. It's a representation of the clear coat on your car. Yes, you will have clear coat on your car. Every original factory produced car, with very, very few exceptions, will have clear coat as the top layer. And it gets confusing very quickly. You know why? Because when people talk about car paint, they generally are thinking about a color. Like, oh, what is the color of your car? What is the color of your car paint? Color, color, color. Well, if it has clear coat as the top layer, which it does, could I not then equally say like, oh, my car is clear? What does that mean, Darren? Well, I bought a car and it's clear paint. What does clear paint look like, Darren? And if it's clear, how could I even see that paint because it's clear? Well, it's clear paint. I ordered it special from the factory and I said, I want clear paint. Darren, that doesn't even compute in my brain. In fact, my brain is beginning to melt. Hence the confusion. Is it car paint? Is it clear coat? Point is clear coat. This represents the clear coat on any car. I produced these 2000 grit sanding marks to be representative of imperfections in your clear coat, imperfections in the car paint. So when I say car paint or clear coat, I'm really talking about the same thing, which is the top layer of any factory original paint job. I did this as part of this video that I'm setting up for to illustrate a point, demonstrate a point. I've got my laser pointer, and in testing to try to bring some clarity to what I'm talking about, I discovered a moment. We'll call it a moment. And I said, oh my gosh, this would be perfect in the context of swirl marks and debunking that myth, which is that, first off, what are swirl marks? And secondly, are swirl marks actually harder to remove if in fact those are swirl marks in your car paint or clear coat? So it's false, okay? I'm just gonna tell you that going in a circular pattern is not what produces swirl marks. If you use the right rag, and by right, what I really mean is an incorrect rag, as an abrasive rag, and you had some rubbing compound that was abrasive enough, classic. I've got someone's stinking car alarm going off outside of my garage. I don't know what's going to translate now on the video. Boy, the fun seriously never ends when it comes to shooting videos. If it's not audio, it's video. If it's not video, it's audio. If it's not immediate sound, it's ambient sound. It's like, oh my gosh, it's gonna like give me a heart attack. So swirl marks. For example, here I have my laser pointer. You'll notice that it is creating a circle, hence the term swirl marks. Now, if you've already been tuning into this, and where is my flashlight? Let's light this baby up. You will be able to see that really those marks, and I'm the one who inflicted them into the surface, are back and forth, unidirectional, one direction, back and forth also. And by the way, if this was on my car, and let's say I applied wax or I applied polish back and forth, would that be the most correct way? And wait a minute, if it's back and forth on this panel, is it considered back and forth on the hood or the roof or the trunk? Or wait, if I'm in the trunk or back in the trunk and now I do back and forth this way, is that still considered back and forth or up and down or side to side? I don't know what it's called. So back and forth, side to side, up and down is all relative. It's relative to the orientation of the moment. Point being, in this moment, this is nothing but back and forth relative to this is the horizon. And in relation to that, or orientation of this is the horizon, this would be considered back and forth or left to right, right to left. If that is the case, then why does this create a circular pattern around it? So based on how I show this light, and I'm pretty sure it's going to capture, so you have the little laser beam right there in the middle, and then you have this circular pattern that is created. Now, if this truly was created because I, as an ignorant car owner that I possibly could be, decided to wax my car because I failed to watch that video of Chris Fix, and I put wax on my car in a circular pattern. I mean, after all, did we not grow up with the Karate Kid? Wax on, wax off, circular, circular. Only to find out that that was incorrect. Like, Mr. Miyagi, you have led me in the wrong direction. How could I be fooled by you when Chris Fix is on YouTube and he's telling me the exact opposite? Never do it in a circular pattern because it's going to produce swirl marks, and swirl marks are harder to remove than other types of marks. Well, to clarify a few points, the only reason that this is showing up in a circular pattern is because this is a circular shape, which is why if you were to view this in the direct sunlight, it would, wait for it, cast a circular pattern. And right now I will insert a picture, assuming that I have the editing skills to do this. So look at this picture. You see the arrows, yes you do. You see the pattern that's being created by the sun's reflection onto the panel of this car. Why is it circular in shape? Which is, I get it. That's why we call it swirl marks. Swirl suggests circular in shape, a swirled effect, a swirled pattern. And I get the confusion. The problem is these YouTube grifters, YouTube detailing grifters precisely, don't bother to verify, and they're not actually speaking from experience. And I get that because I'm sure in some of my videos, I have defaulted to the standard operating rule, which is even though society at large is incorrect in their use of terminology, their definitions of that terminology, I don't want to reinvent the wheel in the moment, so I need to speak in their language. But that's not what's happening a lot of the cases. A lot of the cases, guys are just regurgitating what's already incorrect information. They embellish it and now it becomes even more incorrect information. And it makes my head spin every time I bounce on YouTube or social media, whether it's these car forums or these groups on Facebook, and I think, oh my gosh, if I was a detailer or if I was a car owner and I've got to rely on this information, I am screwed. And I don't mean in a good way. I am screwed because I don't know how to tell the difference between good information versus bad information. Information versus misinformation. How do you know that if you don't have the experience or the skill set to differentiate between the two? And by the way, if I was going to push an agenda, you know what I would do? I would feed you 10 bits of information. 9 of those would be true. 1 of them would be false. So I slip in 1 false piece of information in with the 9 truths. And I do that for an extended period of time. And then I start inserting 2 falsehoods into the 8 truths. So I'm introducing 10 pieces of information, but 2 of the pieces are lies or misinformation, but 8 of them are still true. And I do that for an extended period of time. And then it becomes 3 lies and 7 bits of truth. And then it becomes 4 lies and 6 pieces of truth. You get where I'm headed with this, right? It's called the boiling frog effect. And that is what's happening with social media. And I'm not trying to get on some political platform here. I'm just saying in the world of car care, cosmetic car care, detailing, starting a detailing business matters not. There's so much garbage out there. And it's just like, oh my gosh, if I had to rely on that, I would be screwed, not in a good way. So I'm trying to debunk some of these myths as I go along the way, hence the heightened tonality of my voice. As my wife likes to say, like, oh, wow, honey, take your chill pill. It's like, yeah, I get it. You know, it excites me because it frustrates me because I know what it was like to be ignorant and naive and dumb and uneducated and whatever you want to call it. And it sucks being in that position. I don't want it to suck worse than it already will suck. I want it to suck less for people, not more, because it's going to suck no matter what. That learning curve's gonna suck. Okay, but it doesn't have to suck more than it already sucks. So I'm trying to get it to suck a little less. Hence, swirl marks. So if this truly was a pattern created because of the scratches in the surface, then if I move this, it would not stay in this very uniform circular pattern, would it not? How's that for some critical thinking? So regardless of where I move it, it's always going to display the circular pattern because the light source is circular. Hence, in the direct sunlight, the sun, circular in shape. Therefore, it casts a reflective quality in a circular shape. Hence, swirl marks. And let's just go deeper with this conversation since I've got your attention, assuming that you're actually still here. So swirl marks, based on the industry in which you talk about that term. Swirl marks can only be created as a byproduct of light reflected off of a surface. So based on the imperfections of that surface and the light source will determine what you see, the type of pattern that is displayed. So if it's a circular light source, it's going to be a circular type of pattern. So swirl marks in the world of novices, beginners, detailing grifters, whatever you want to call it, they will refer to this type of effect. This is where I will insert the picture yet again as swirl marks. Now in the professional / commercial world, those are not swirl marks, okay? Swirl marks are only a byproduct of this machine, a rotary polisher, because of the unique way this works, which is it only rotates on a single axis point. It will or has the ability to produce what is called swirl marks in this world, the professional world. So as professionals, we don't call that effect swirl marks. We call that wash scratch, as in car washing. We call it towel scratch. We call it spider webbing, cobwebbing, many things we call it. But the only time I refer to that as swirl marks is when I don't want to reinvent the world or reinvent the wheel and take the time to educate someone in that scope of the topic. because that's not Swirl Marks. This is Swirl Marks. This machine, which is different than this machine that has two movements to it. So this is what's called a dual action. Dual meaning two. Action as in movements. Random orbital, which is different than a dual action forced rotation. So this spins as well as vibrates. You can call it vibrate, oscillate, whatever you want. So this whole head spins like this, but then this head spins independent also. Only one of these movements is gear driven. So this will never produce what professionals call swirl marks. Swirl marks are a byproduct of this machine, which is unique because it only spins in one direction on a single axis point. And because it does that, it produces a unique scratch pattern. That unique scratch pattern will produce what we call, and here's another term, buffer tracks, swirl marks, hologramming, okay? There's a term for you. And that's really all that any professional is going to label those as: buffer trails, hologramming, swirl marks, which, to come full circle, brings us back to that big lie. Which is swirl marks. Is that swirl marks? And honestly, it really doesn't matter what you call it, so long as that who you're talking to is on the same page. So if you have defined your terms, and let's say I'm talking to a customer and they say, hey Darren, you see that, like, I don't know, that scratch pattern, the swirl marks, whatever, I don't like that. Can you make that go away? It's like, you know what? I don't actually need to educate them unless Johnny customer has told me, hey Darren, please educate me. Or I might throw that in there. It's like, hey, by the way, that's not actually swirl marks. It doesn't really matter. I know what you're talking about and I can fix it. I can fix it through polishing. And ironically, because they're scratches, that's the only reason swirl marks are going to display themselves, is because of scratches, micro scratching in the surface of your clear coat. The only way to remove that permanently is to scratch your way to success in the form of a compound or a polish with abrasive particles, which is what I'm setting the next video up for, is to define shine. And shine is all about reflective qualities. For example, since I have your attention, and let's see how many of you actually stay here, because I'm going to throw in a keyword, big boy. And this references a commercial that aired probably like 20 years ago, and it was very comical. So big boy, I think someone was yelling into his phone as to his password because I think maybe Siri was trying to get his password. He's like, big boy. And he was embarrassed by it and he didn't want to scream it out, and the phone wasn't picking it up. And anyhow, so that's the key word. So here's the challenge. If you're still tuned in the comments below, you put just that term, big boy, nothing else, because people are gonna, if enough of you actually watch this and enough of you put that term in there, they're gonna be like, WTF, what is going on here? Why are people coming in and just putting big boy in the comments? Well, you guys will know. So no spoiler alerts, just do it. And if you wanna make additional comments, then make additional comments separately, okay? So there's the challenge, big boy. So here we are, and let me make sure the camera is in position. And I want to do as much, or actually, I'm going to take that back. I want to do as little editing as possible, and I'm already at 19 minutes. So here we are. I will bring you a little closer so we can illustrate this. So check out the back wall. You see how that green laser is being diffused? So it's creating this starburst pattern. And look at the acrylic lens. I am showing it through the 2000 grit sanding marks. But look what happens when I go up, and now I'm going through the clear part of the lens. And notice the reflection on the wall. It's a very precise dot. And occasionally, as I move this around, it'll create a starburst pattern like right there. That's because there is a blemish, a flaw, a scratch, some kind of imperfection in that acrylic lens that will cast and diffuse and scatter the light rays in an unwanted way. Unless, of course, you like a starburst pattern on your car, which I don't. So here we have light is being scattered because of all the 2000 grit sanding marks. Now it's unscattered or far less scattered. How cool is that? So let's see if I can replicate this yet again. Here we have the swirled pattern. And regardless of where I moved it, and right there with critical thinking, you could say like, okay, if this truly was a swirled pattern. So let's say I'm applying the wax or the polish and I get done with this area. Now I move down to this area and then I move this area. There's gonna be some overlap. So if there was truly overlap, then there would be all these crazy like circular grids, but yet look how perfectly the perimeter of this retains regardless of where I move this. You know why? Because this pattern is dependent on the light source, not the scratches. Now it only shows up because there's scratches, hence this pattern. Now what I do is I hold this at an angle and it reveals how thick this acrylic lens is. But if I hold it straight on, let's see if I can catch it into the actual lens of this, which will probably just send your eyes crazy. Anyhow, so here we are. Alrighty, let's see if there was any other subject. And while I have you here, yet again, I did this little illustration on my whiteboard. I have 3 examples here. First one's a perfect line. Second one is jagged. The third one is severely jagged. So this is representative of the clear coat on your car. So a perfect flat surface that's been shined. So for example, you could say that this is perfectly flat, as in absent of any texture. I don't mean flat as in lacking in gloss or shine. I mean flat as in no texture. But it's not shiny, right? It's certainly not optically clear. So creating the best possible shine is more than just creating a flat surface so that there's no distortion based on surface texture. So this is representative of surface texture, which is very normal, called orange peel. And as the name suggests, it has the appearance of the skin of an orange, which is very ununiform, very inconsistent. There's highs and lows, peaks and valleys. So this is a form of distortion with light. So as light reflects off of this perfectly flat surface will be different than how light is reflected off of this surface. This will create its own level of distortion. Now this represents what most people's car paint clear coat looks like, because it will have the orange peel effect, which is normal, but it has all these imperfections that sit on top of the paint in the form of bonded airborne pollutants, contaminants. They may call this rail dust, industrial fallout. That sits on top of the paint. Now, some of it can etch down into the paint, but that sits on top of the paint, which is a form of distortion in and of itself. And then you have scratches that go down into the clear coat. Not all scratches are created equal. Some scratches are deeper than others. Your clear coat is finite, meaning you don't get to add to its thickness. Unlike a body shop, if they mess up, they can pull it back into the spray booth and apply more clear coat and start over. Your original factory clear coated paint job, you don't get to add clear coat to it. And this is not an invitation to bring into the whole world of ceramic coatings. A video for another time. Point is you only get to figure out how you're going to take care of it and how you're not going to diminish the thickness of the clear coat. So some of those scratches will be deep enough that if you actually remove them entirely, you would destroy the complete integrity of the clear coat on your car. Not a wanted byproduct. So not all scratches are created equal. Not all scratches should actually be removed. It's always going to be this balance act of between removing the scratches versus diminishing the scratches and retaining as much thickness of your clear coat. I get it. I transitioned into a lot of topics there, but I thought I would just go with the flow. Once again, remember, if you saw that part and the keyword, put that keyword below. And if you learn but a single thing today's video, give it a thumbs up. Always check the links below in the description box. It will take you to one of my websites where I wax even longer and stronger on any given subject that I covered in today's video, whether it's swirl marks, what are swirl marks, what causes swirl marks, what is clear coat, what does clear coat do? You will find that in the description box below. With that said, I will see you on the next video.